Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
Hi there guys, it's Adam Martin here. Black Friday. But I like to partake in Black Friday every now and then, not the kind of, go to shops at midnight and wait for ages to get the latest thing. No, none of that. It's more about getting the deals that are on offer. So I went to HMV, which for non-UK viewers is like our last bastion for specializing in physical media like vinyl, DVDs, Blu-rays, 4Ks, etc. I took to their website and sourced out some deals. And trust me, I got a lot of deals. I thought it would be really fun to take you through what I got, because in the post the other day I got this great big box of stuff. So I think I need to open up this box, as I already have, and I'll show you the contents inside. So we're going to kick things off with one of the films from last year, which is Wonka, starring Timothée Chalamet. Now, this came out in 2023. I never got a chance to see this in the cinema, partly because I was in pantomime last year, like I am this year. But I remember seeing the trailer, and I was a little dubious about how this prequel to the Gene Wilder film would be. But from lots of friends who've seen it and other people who've seen it, they say it's actually really, really good. So, it was in the sale, it already had a reduced price and then getting 20% off. So it seemed like a no-brainer to pick this up and to finally check it out for myself. Next up is another big blockbuster film that I never got round to see, and that is Top Gun Maverick. Now, I like the original Top Gun. I think it's a really fun 80s movie, great soundtrack as well. And when Top Gun Maverick came out, I remember there being a lot of hype for it, and I never really quite understood that at the time. But again, this was a film a lot of people saw and said was actually really, really good. So again, like Wonka, it was already reduced, and then getting 20% off, it made sense to finally get the Blu-ray. And just to note as well, a lot of what you'll see here will be Blu-rays. I don't really go for many 4Ks at the minute. I do have some, and you might even see one in this video, one or two, but it's mainly going to be Blu-ray. Next up, we've got a true 80s classic yet again. It's Predator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I honestly can't remember if I've seen Predator all the way through as in the original. I obviously know a lot of the famous clips, a lot of the famous memes, like some of Arnold's catchphrases and stuff like that. But part of me is telling me I've never actually sat and watched this film all the way through. So, again, Black Friday sale, no better time to watch it. It's apparently one of his best, and it just screams 80s, this sort of film. Next up, a film from the 90s, we have Face Off with John Travolta and Nicolas Cage. Now, is this film really goofy and a little bit silly? Yeah, hell yeah. The premise is, quite balmy, quite ridiculous. But I remember watching this ages ago and just having a real laugh with it. It's one of those films you can stick on with friends and just absolutely have a giggle with it. Whether or not that was the intention, I don't think it was. But again, already reduced, great to get it on Blu-ray. Another 90s one, the debut film from Quentin Tarantino, no less, it's Reservoir Dogs. I remember watching this about a decade ago for the first time and absolutely loving it. I love the concept, I love the setup, again, the soundtrack's a killer one, and ideally I did want to try and find a Quentin Tarantino box set on Blu-ray. Now, HMV didn't really offer one, or if they did, I think it was out of stock perhaps, and I'm certain there are Tarantino Blu-ray sets, but for the time being, I thought Reservoir Dogs is a great film. I'd love to have it on Blu-ray, so here it is. Now, this one is something I haven't seen, but I'm definitely well aware of. It's the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Now, this in musical land is, renowned, it's iconic, it's a great big party, there's a lot of interactive moments in there. And I've seen the stage version, sort of, when I worked as an usher. I mean, you're mainly focusing on making sure people don't film the damn thing, but I did get to see bits of it, and it just seems really fun, like a party. So I was really interested to finally check out the film version of this that was done back in the 70s, and now I'll get the chance to. Next up, we have Apocalypse Now, the final cut. Now, I'm very aware this is revered as one of the greatest war movies of all time. It was made about the Vietnam War, which when this came out in 1979, that had only been over for about 4 or 5 years, so it would have been really fresh at the time. Francis Ford Coppola is the director behind it, and I figured that after being told for years and years that I needed, quote-unquote needed, to see this movie, that getting it on Blu-ray was finally the right time to do it. So I'm looking forward to spending, how long is this? Oh, over 3 hours watching this film. Next up is a film I've wanted to watch for ages, and that is True Lies. Now, this is a film by James Cameron, as in the guy who directed The Terminator, Terminator 2, Titanic, the Avatar films, the highest grossing director of all time, or certainly one of them. And True Lies is from 1994. It's sort of a spy thriller comedy. You've got Arnold Schwarzenegger, you've got Jamie Lee Curtis, and this film holds up quite well from what a lot of people say. You know, it's still a fun watch, and I think I owned this on DVD ages ago, never got around to watching it, so a Blu-ray upgrade was bound to come eventually, and here we are. So I think this will be one of the first things of my Black Friday haul that I'd like to check out. Onto some TV now, at least I think this is the TV one. This is Educating Rita, starring Michael Caine and Julie Walters. Now, Educating Rita was originally a play, I believe, by Willie Russell, who did Blood Brothers, if you're familiar with his work. But I have seen the stage version of this, or a stage version, and really enjoyed it. So a film or TV film version, this is from 1983. It's got the ITV logo all over it. Can you let me know in the comments, was this a made-for-TV film, or did this actually go out in the cinemas? Because I'm not quite sure off the top of my head, but I did want to see the film version after seeing the stage version, and this was one of the cheapest items, literally a couple of pounds. Next up, get ready, boutique people, we've got a Criterion here. We've got It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Now, this is from the 1960s. It's been heralded as one of the best comedies of the era. I was introduced to this film by James Rolfe, known as the Angry Video Game Nerd, but he also does a lot of stuff on film, and he, in a list, rated this as his #1 film of all time. So, of all time. I haven't seen it all the way through, but I think ever since watching that list of his, I've always been very intrigued about it. So the fact it's a Criterion lease, the mastering is going to be up to par. You know, there's going to be special features galore, and Criterion were doing their own thing. Now, I believe this one wasn't in the 40%. I just got the 20% off this one. Next up, some more comedy. One I'm not overly familiar with, but I'm intrigued. It's I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. In terms of the blaxploitation drama that was popular in the 70s, I have this odd fascination with it. Yes, a lot of them, you could argue, obviously become more derivative as time goes on. They become a bit more schlocky, like any sort of exploitation genre of film. But I find them oddly fascinating and entertaining to watch. You know, I've seen things like Truck Turner and Coffee and then Foxy Brown and, you know, things like that. Superfly, all that sort of stuff. This is from the 80s, and I believe it's like a comedy spoof of that 70s blaxploitation, so I don't know if that was one of the first, because there's been countless parodies since. I mean, Black Dynamite, what a masterpiece. So when I saw this and read the premise and that it was in the sale, I thought I really have to check this out, because I'm just a fan of this genre, the blaxploitation genre, and a comedy spoof of it, particularly from the 80s when the genre would have been still quite fresh in people's heads. I think will be quite interesting. Next up, this one was a bit, I don't want to say a mistake, but it was a bit of a misinterpretation on my part. This is Slumber Party Massacre. Now, horror fans may know that there was originally a film in the early 80s under this name that was by Roger Corman, who is like the king of B-movies. He churned out films non-stop. This is the remake from 2021. Now, if you go by the reviews on the box, you know, it's saying perfect sleepover, scary fun. A lot of positive praise on the back as well. But for some reason, I think because it's in the blurb, I definitely thought this was the original film, which I haven't seen and would like to see, but this is the remake. I think I'll still watch it and then eventually get round to the original. I believe the original film and Slumber Party Massacre 2 are getting Blu-ray releases sometime in December this year, so if that's your thing, definitely go and check that out. Next up, we've got some classic TV. We have Edge of Darkness. This is an 80s series from the BBC, which is one of those series I've often heard a lot about, but never really seen any clips or, you know, actually watched in any way. Obviously, being that this was in the sale, this is on Blu-ray, this is a complete series. It's BBC, you know, in the 80s, the golden age of TV, some would say, 70s and 80s, that sort of thing. So really excited to have this, to checking it out, to seeing if it's worth all the hype and praise I've seen of it over the years, because there's been a lot of it. And then I know a lot of you, particularly the horror Halloween-y fans, are going to be thrilled that I have this now. I managed to pick up a copy of Ghostwatch. Now, this is a very infamous BBC, I don't know what you call it, sort of docudrama, but more, I guess, a drama style that was released in the 90s. It caused a lot of controversy at the time. It's still regular Halloween viewing for people. Some people claim they can't even watch it. Now, a lot of you this year for Halloween said I should have done a video on Ghostwatch, and that would have been great, but, you know, I hadn't seen it. I didn't have a copy of it. This was the first thing I saw in the HMV sale that piqued my interest, being that it was in the sale. It's produced by 101, or this version is distributed by 101, which is a label I've had a lot of fun with over the years. So I'm finally looking forward to checking this out. The question is, do I wait till near October again to watch it, which is a long time away, or do I watch it early? Next up, I managed to pick up some foreign cinema in there as well. This is Eyes Without a Face, or if you want to go by its original French title, Les Yeux Sans Visage. I probably pronounced that wrong. 20 French viewers, I do apologize. I'm just an ignorant Brit, okay? This was a horror film released in 1960. It's in black and white. I was first made aware of this again via James Rolfe, via his Monster Madness series, and how sort of grim and eerie it was for its time. So I have seen some clips of this, but this was released, or this version was distributed by the BFI, who again, like a lot of these boutique labels or labels that specialize in more niche stuff, that it's often great masters, a lot of special features, and there certainly is on this one. So really looking forward to checking out some vintage horror, particularly French vintage horror, because I've seen vintage horror from other countries, but I don't think, to my knowledge, I've seen any from Le France. Continuing on the horror trend, we've got, some would say classic, some would say schlocky, but nevertheless, we've got the Anaconda set. Now, this is the Anaconda collection. I love this front cover here of the titular snake itself, and it does contain 4 films. You have, obviously, the original Anaconda. You've got Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid. You've got Anaconda 3, Offspring, and then Anaconda's Trail of Blood. Now, the first one of these films, some say, is actually a genuine horror classic. Yes, have some of the effects aged because it was the late 90s? Of course they have. As the films go on, do they get more schlocky and weird and pointless? Yes, but sort of like with some of the films I mentioned earlier, these are great to stick on with a bunch of friends if you're having a, a party or a late night, you want a few drinks, snacks, all that sort of stuff. These films are perfect horror schlock for that. It's in this real nice slipcase as well. I believe there was a bigger box version of this, although to be honest, when I'm always trying to save space, I think that the slim version, is going to look nicer on the shelf. Now, here's one that I didn't expect to have an interest in until I read the blurb and thought this could be the best thing ever. This is cooking, price-wise. So this is a cooking program that was hosted by Vincent Price, the master of horror himself. This was produced in the early 70s. And from what I understand from the blurb, this is literally Vincent Price telling you how to cook various things, which sounds like the best thing ever, no? I mean, I love Vincent Price. He's one of my favorite horror stars ever, as he is to a lot of people. So to watch him be eccentric and do this cooking program just sounds hilarious. It sounds wholesome. It sounds like comfort food, no pun intended. And the supplements on here, there's a lot of special features, a lot of Central Office of Information films about cooking, so you get to see some vintage public information films, essentially. This is a brand new release from the BFI. It's part of their, what they call it, it's like the Target label. This is number 50, but I just thought this is one to get. Bear in mind, though, I will say this is a brand new release at the time of recording this, so this is excluded from the Black Friday promotion. This is one of the few items that I did pay full price for. Right then, next up, yes, there's more. We have another Criterion release now. This is Original Cast Album, Company. Now, this is a 50-minute documentary, so you might think, well, why would I pay, Criterion prices? Well, first of all, this is one of the Criterion titles that is currently 40% off, so I picked this up for something like £10.79, which for a Criterion Blu-ray is an excellent price. And this is basically sort of a behind-the-scenes look at the original cast of the Broadway show Company recording the cast album. This was in 1970. You've got a lot of the original actors. You've got the man behind the project, Stephen Sondheim, who is, considered a musical theatre legend. And just watching these guys craft this album is fascinating. Obviously, I'm a performer as well, so it's particularly interesting for me. But if you're interested in musicals, or this show in particular, I highly, highly recommend that you pick this up. This is a great insight into that world, into the MT world, particularly in at that time, back in 1970. Next up, we're back to the blaxploitation drama, because we have Blackula, the complete collection. And some of you, if you haven't heard of this, you might be thinking, Blackula? Are you you literally mean a black version of Dracula? Yes. But what I will tell you is the man who plays Blackula, William Marshall, my God, does he give this character grace and dignity and gravitas. Like, most of the time when he's swanning around, you believe how suave, how cool this guy is. And the first one in particular, I think, is a surprisingly really good film. The second one, I could sort of do without. I didn't enjoy that one nearly as much. But the first film, really entertaining. Great, great soundtrack. A lot of early 70s soul bangers on there. This release is from Eureka, and I've reversed the sleeve. I'll throw up the original sleeve art for you there as well. But it's got both Blackula films, which is the original, and Scream, Blackula, Scream. So if you're a fan of blaxploitation or 70s horror or just great soul music, it's definitely worth getting this collection. It's really affordable even before the Black Friday deal. Back to some classic TV, we have The Naked Civil Servant starring John Hurt. Now this is about Quentin Crisp, who grew up mostly in the earlier part of the 20th century when being homosexual was illegal. You know, you could be thrown in prison for this, and obviously the stigma, the discrimination was at an all-time high. This is basically about his life, how he navigated through life in the UK being a gay man. And John Hurt puts in an excellent performance. I think this was one of the roles that really broke his name. If you want a masterclass in performance, then watch John Hurt in anything, but The Naked Civil Servant is definitely up there with some of his career highlights. Continuing on with some classic TV, we've got another new release. This is The Box of Delights, the 40th anniversary edition. This is a really wholesome, really fun, really classic sort of, children's Christmas adventure story. It's in 6 parts. It's got Patrick Troughton in it as well, the second Doctor Who himself. This was just a lot of fun. And I know people who grew up in the 80s who remember watching this on broadcast have so many fond memories of it. This is the first time, I believe, that the Box of Delights has come to Blu-ray as well. As this is a brand new release, like with the cooking price-wise, you will not get the Black Friday discount on this. So just to be aware, full price you'll pay for this one. But I think with the status of this program, it's definitely worth it. We're getting into the home stretch now. I have another Criterion release for you. This is Night of the Living Dead, the original masterpiece from George A. Romero from 1968. Now, this Criterion was in the Black Friday sale. It was not, I believe, in the 40% off sale. And also, this happens to be the 4K edition, the 4K and Blu-ray. Well, first of all, I love Night of the Living Dead, George A. Romero stuff, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, great zombie films, great classic horror films. And as I said, I dabble in 4K here and there where I can, and because this was in the offer and I couldn't find like a standard Blu-ray version, and the fact that, this is a Criterion release, I thought, why not? It does contain a Blu-ray with it as well, so it's not like, if you want this and you don't have a 4K player yet, you're not going to miss out entirely. So really glad to now have this in high definition in the collection. I will always have a soft spot for my Box of the Dead DVD set that I had for years and years, but I think, if we carry on in this direction, it might be finally time to bid that adieu. So I've got a pair of films for you now, actually. I picked up Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. These are two different films. The first one, this one here, is from 1931. This one is from 1941. I've seen both of these before when I owned the DVD set, and I mean, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story is a classic one for sure, but why both of these films? Well, this film in particular is phenomenal for its time and still holds up really well now. It's nearly 100 years old, and Frederick March, who plays both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, gives a tour de force acting performance. And again, this is the early sound era. This is the same year that Dracula and Frankenstein were released, and it's captivating to watch. You can't take your eyes away from it. I genuinely say this is one of the absolute horror classics that needs to be up there with Dracula and Frankenstein. This is a Warner Archives release, or part of the Archive collection. It was brand new, but I'll explain something about that in a moment. Then this one, the 1941 version, it's a Warner Archive release. It stars Spencer Tracy, and it is still a really good film, but I think it doesn't come close to the 1931 version, at least for me, but it's still a very good interpretation in its own right, still definitely worth picking up if you ask me. Now, both of these films, as I say, were released brand new. They've only been out for about a week at the time I'm recording this, so I assumed, like Box of Delights, etc., they're going to be full price. I got the Black Friday deal on these. I did pick these up in store, so it might have just ran through the system. Next up, the last Criterion I have for you today, and this one is Marriage Story from 2019. Now, this is a Netflix production. I think you can still find it on the streaming site, as you'd expect. It stars Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, and this is one of those films that I call, very human. It's a very intimate look at just human life and obviously a marriage between these two. It's emotional, it's gripping, it's very intense at points, very powerful, but absolutely worth a watch. And I'm so glad that Criterion have put this out on physical media as well. I've been wanting to get this for ages, but like with a lot of Criterions, the price is always really high. This was not in the 40% off Criterions, it was in the 20% Black Friday deal, so you're still going to shave off a fair amount of money if you want this, which I highly recommend you pick up. Great film. Really great film. Next up, this one makes me so happy because this literally is just my childhood. It's Thunderbirds, baby. The complete series, all 32 episodes from the 60s, plus a bunch of supplements and special features. Now, I did debate on this for a while. I had the DVD set, I've had that for years, but I'm very aware that next year in 2025 is going to be Thunderbirds' 60th anniversary. And in the past, a company called Network were doing 60th anniversary box sets for a lot of Gerry Anderson properties, such as Supercar, Stingray, Fireball XL5. They're no longer in business, sadly. Great label, sad that they've gone. But it does make me wonder whether ITV or whoever owns the rights is going to do a 60th anniversary Thunderbirds re-release on Blu-ray. If it was in a lavish box set, I'm all over that, and I'd probably swap this out. But I thought it's in the Black Friday deal. It's the cheapest I've seen it for a while. Even secondhand, this runs up for a fair amount when it's in decent condition. So I thought, hey, finally time to own the Thunderbirds in high definition, and I'm glad I have it now. Some more, well, I say classic TV, more for me, I guess, but this is Avatar: The Last Airbender, the complete series. I think any child growing up in the 2000s when this originally aired will know how important, how wonderful this series is. The story it told over its 3 seasons is gripping, it's emotional, it's heartwarming, it's heartbreaking, it's a very funny show. And I know that, you know, obviously we had the first film adaptation and now we've got a new series on Netflix, but like a lot of things, it will never ever compare to the original Avatar, which again, I'm really glad to now finally have on Blu-ray. This is something I was after for quite a while, and in Black Friday, when the discounts come rolling, you gotta take your chance. Remember we were talking about zombies earlier? Well, we're gonna talk about them again. This is Dawn of the Dead. This is a lovely release from Second Sight Films, who do great box sets like this. And I mean, Dawn of the Dead, what can you say? The sequel to Night of the Dead came out almost a decade later. And a lot of people still say it is the quintessential zombie movie. And I think I'd be hard inclined not to agree. There are also several versions of this film on this set. You have the theatrical cut, you've got the extended Cannes cut, you've got the Argento cut, and then a boatload of special features. So if you like Dawn of the Dead, this box set from Second Sight is absolutely one I would recommend. Normally very pricey, not as pricey thanks to Black Friday sales, so get it before it's gone because it goes quick. Another box set now, one I'm very happy to have, is the Tim Burton collection. A great filmmaker, his own very distinct style, and this collates 9 of the films he's made over his career, including, we have Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, the original, Batman, Batman Returns, Mars Attacks, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the 2005 version, The Corpse Bride, Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, and Dark Shadows. Now, I've seen some of these films, and I haven't seen others, so I'll be looking forward to checking out the films I haven't seen, particularly Beetlejuice. Yes, I haven't seen the original Beetlejuice. I know. But just to own, 9 of this great filmmaker's works on one fairly slim box set as well for space is great. Just happy to have that on the shelf. Another filmmaker collection, if you will, we have Nolan, the works of Christopher Nolan. Now, this isn't everything he's ever made, quite naturally, but it is a collection of many of his films. There are 8 films on here, and starting from earliest to latest, we've got Batman Begins, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, Dunkirk, and Tenet. Now, I've seen all of these apart from The Prestige and Tenet. I know Tenet is quite, I think controversial is the wrong word. I just think a lot of people don't like it. But I'm curious to seeing it for myself, and I'd like to see The Prestige as well. But again, Christopher Nolan is a wonderful filmmaker, and to own a vast collection of his films on one set just is ideal in every way, shape, or form. Okay, we've reached the end. This is the last thing I want to show you today, and I think it's going to be quite a fascinating watch. This is the complete series of The World at War. This was a 26-part documentary series that was originally produced between 1973 and 1974. It went out on ITV, produced by Thames, I think it was, and it offered a very real insight into what World War II was like, but not just for people fighting, for people back at home. And you got to think, back then in the 70s, they had a lot more people to interview, to draw from. The Second World War would have still been relatively fresh in several generations' minds back in the 1970s. So to be able to check out this series that has been called groundbreaking, revolutionary, that still holds up as one of the best British documentary series ever made, narrated by Laurence Olivier, I mean, how could I not pass this up? This is a network release, and as I said, the label is now sadly no longer existent. I'm assuming HMV are just selling off the remaining network stock that they have, but really happy to have grabbed this. I've heard about this series for years, and I can't wait to check it out for myself. And that, dear viewer, is absolutely everything I picked up on Black Friday this year. It's a lot of stuff. As you can see, it's a lot of stuff to sift through, but the stuff that I've already seen before, I'm finally glad to have on Blu-ray or in some cases 4K, and the stuff that I haven't seen before, I'm really looking forward to checking out. I always, when I try and do big orders like that, I like to try and do a mix of either stuff I've seen and want to have in my collection, and then stuff that I haven't seen and want to check out for the first time. But honestly, like I said, I don't tend to partake in much Black Friday, but when there's really great releases like the ones I've shown you go in, how could I pass that up? But I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed looking through with me what I picked up this Black Friday. If you did, please leave a like on the video. It really helps us out. And subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. We'd love to have you aboard. In the meantime, I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Shaun Knock, Daud Khan, Ajmac 200017, Deck, Jen, Traffi, Evan Hart 41, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Marnanel Thurman, John Wakefield, Kieran Boulton, 40-something Manchild, Jerry Ralph, John McLeod, Saint Rocket 9, James Wallace, Ben, Kat Hegarty, and Stephen Oliver, our AMTV staff members.